Good morning. Thanks for being here. We'll see who else wanders in after they've gotten their donut. They'll find us. They'll find us. I'm really excited about this forum. We, as many of you know, a group of St. Columbans went to Iona this summer. So this is a piece of our follow-up from our journey. There's plenty more to say than can fit in an hour. Excuse me, but perhaps this is a bit of a teaser for folks, and maybe there'll be more that we delve into related to Celtic spirituality. We're a little overdue on getting this together, but I'm excited that we're here today. I'll start us with prayer and then give a bit of context about Celtic spirituality and Iona, knowing that these are not familiar to many people. But first, let's pray. This is a prayer that comes from the Iona community. God be with you. Let us pray. Eternal God, maker of the skies above, lowly Christ, born amidst the growing earth, Spirit of life, wind over the flowing waters, in earth, sea, and sky, you are there. O hidden mystery, Son behind all suns, soul behind all souls, in everything we touch, in everyone we meet. Your presence is around us, and we give you thanks. Amen. A little bit about Celtic spirituality. So Celtic spirituality comes from the Celts, as you would imagine, and predates Christianity. And the foundation for this spirituality is a respect and honor for the fullness of creation, a recognition that all of the earth is holy. So it's a very earth-centered worldview. And in time, through encounters with empire and with Christianity, much of which came through war and conquest, sadly, Celtic Christianity was formed. So this combines the Celtic spirituality that pre-existed Christianity in this area of the world with the addition of a Trinitarian theology. So that makes for a Christianity that values the wisdom of all people, of men and women alike, people of all ages. It values the wisdom of the earth and of the Spirit moving through the earth, and focuses on prayer, meditation, and cultivation of soul friendships as part of the practice of faith. We've lost a lot of the practice of Celtic spirituality and of Celtic Christianity in particular. But hearing those things, I imagine that those sound like values that could be really well suited for the world we are in. Cultivating soul friendships, valuing the wisdom of all people, valuing the wisdom of the earth. To me, at least, that sounds like the wisdom that we need in a hurting world. So that is part of the premise, part of the thesis that John Philip Newell offers. John Philip guided our Iona pilgrimage. He's an expert in Celtic spirituality. And we'll probably hear a bit more in answers from our panelists related to what this wisdom might offer us today. A little bit about Iona in particular. Iona is an island off the coast of an island off the coast of Scotland. So in journeying there, each of the pilgrims, we boarded a bus and took a bus across to one port, then took a ferry, then drove across that island, then took another ferry to make it to Iona. So it's not easy to get to, which is part of the privilege of being there, is that it is disconnected in a way that is really beautiful. The reason that St. Columba's church goes to Iona is because the story goes that St. Columba landed there in 1563, and he founded an abbey there. So that's our connection. Yeah. What did I say? 15. Yep, sorry about that. Thank you. 563, very different. Thank you. 563, Columba arrived there and founded this community. The abbey has since become an ecumenical worshiping community and has ministry that extends onto the mainland. And the Iona community as it exists today was founded by George MacLeod in 1938. So that's a worldwide community where Iona is the home base, but their ministry focuses on taking what is learned on the island in that place and spreading it out further. So that's just a bit of context. We'll learn a lot more from our panelists as we continue our conversation, and we'll also have time for question and answer at the end. Excuse me. But I wanted to give a bit of context for folks who are unfamiliar with Iona and with Celtic spirituality. I'm grateful to these 5 pilgrims who have expressed willingness to participate in this conversation. And I'll invite each of them to introduce themselves. And if you'd share your name, perhaps a bit about your connection at St. Columba's, and why you were moved to go on the Iona pilgrimage. What got you there?
Hello, I'm Patty Chu. I've been coming here for about 28 years. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm Patty Chu. I've been coming here for 28 years. My children were baptized here and sang in the choirs. And so I taught Sunday school, and now I sing in the choir. I wanted to go on this pilgrimage because I wanted to see Iona after coming to this church for so many years. I wanted the context. I wanted to see Iona, and I wanted to see Scotland, because I'm an English professor and I haven't been to Scotland before. And so I wanted to learn about St. Columba and Celtic spirituality in the place. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Pike. I have been coming here since I was a child, and I will tell that story a little bit as we go along, but I left my parents' evangelical church to come here, and then came back when we had kids. Like Patty, I've wanted to go to Iona since I was a child here. I didn't have the money to do that then, so I was really excited about it. And one thing about Iona is that it is considered a thin place, a place where people from all over the world, religious faiths or not, experience the divide between the temporal and the spiritual to be very thin. John Philip Newell talks about some people get off the ferry and just burst into tears because they're experiencing the thin place. I really, really wanted that to happen for me. It didn't, but it is a beautiful, wonderful experience to be there.
I'm Selby McPhee, and I started coming to St. Columba's in 1993 when I moved to Washington. It was a church recommended to me by my church in Boston, and I've been singing in the choir for all those years, which would, forgive me for being late. I've never been to the in-between things because I've always been singing in the choir. I wanted to go to Iona, well, partly for the same reasons, curiosity about Iona and a sense that it was a mystical, magical place. But really, it was that I was in a liminal or transitional period in my life. My husband had died a year before, and I was in the process of moving. I moved from a house I'd been in for 30 years to Ingleside, which is a retirement community. So I was in a reflective, searching period, and it felt good to think about going on a pilgrimage at that moment?
Thanks. Hi, I'm Ron Weiser, also a longtime parishioner here. My wife Carrie and I got deeply involved when we first joined St. Columba's in the STEP program, and I often say that and St. Columba's is what made Washington home for us, and we kind of never looked back. Very similar to Selby, I was at a point, well, we were replacements at the last minute, not the last minute, but we were replacements for someone who canceled. So whoever canceled, thank you for the opportunity. But when the opportunity came to us, it was not only the chance to go on pilgrimage with some of our dearest friends, but also I was also in a transitional place in professional life and personal life. And the idea of a pilgrimage was, like for Selby, was for me a real opportunity.
I'm Ron North. We've been parishioners since the late 1980s. I spent some time teaching junior high here, and I was a tutor in the STEP program. I joined this pilgrimage, I think, mainly because I was on the pilgrimage in 2020 to the Holy Land, and it's a chance to be with Ledley. He's a different Ledley when he's freed from all of us. And I too cried when I first stepped onto the island of Iona, but I realized then that Nan had set her luggage on my foot, so that probably doesn't count.
Okay.
Thank you. My next question is sort of the top line about your experience. What's a learning or a piece of the experience while we were at Iona that is sticking with you and has been sticking with you since that time? So about 5 months ago now. I'm curious if there's things that are still sort of rattling around in your mind. And anyone can start.
Well, I have the microphone, so I might as well start. And I'm sure, like many of us who went on this trip, I'm still processing the remoteness of the island, the ruins, the fierce wind that is there, the ancient geology. But there's one particular creature that sticks with me, a creature that is sort of sending me a Celtic message. And this creature is the oyster catcher. I love this bird. And this is a bird that is a shore bird. You could call it a wader, W-A-D-E-R. It's not going to bring you coffee. And this is an animal with a sturdy, long, straight beak, and it opens oysters, and it opens other mollusks and feeds that way. The little baby chicks can't feed themselves, so the parents have to take care of them and feed them. This is a remarkable bird, and to me, it really sent me a message. They are beach nesters, which means that their eggs are camouflaged and just laying out in shallow scrapes along the beach. And Nan and I, my wife, were walking, just the two of us, out toward the west coast of Iona looking for ancient rocks. And we found a cove with a small beach, and there was one solitary quarreling oyster catcher. Evidently, we were probably near its eggs or near its chicks. And so we made our way, and we were on a search for rocks in this area. And we managed to find some interesting ones. So the oyster catcher, it's found all over the world. It's very much a threatened creature. About 100 years ago, our country made laws to protect them, but they still have loss of habitation, they have climate change, they have many predators. They even have plastics on the beach that look like food. So their life is very fragile and precarious. They seem to be on a knife's edge. And this sort of sent me a Celtic message.
My Celtic message, I guess, came early on from our leader, John Phillip, who, when I first met him, I'd be honest and say I wasn't sure he was going to be my kind of spiritual leader. But he certainly grew on me as the week went on. And he had this mantra. He would always refer to the natural world, the outdoors, as the cathedral of the earth, sea, and sky. And that's become a little bit of a joke at our house. Is like if you're having a bad day, you need to take a walk. I'd say you're going to go worship in the cathedral of the earth, sea, and sky. But it did, what really has stuck with me, not only that little catchphrase, but really the idea of, the Celtic spirituality focus on the natural world and living in harmony with the natural world. And I do find myself now paying more attention, to climate change and to the challenge, and seeing that as kind of like the challenge of our time, and listening to the news in a little bit different way, and trying to find, as part of my sort of spirituality, how do you live in one, with the natural world. So I don't think that really changed my outlook. I think, that's a little bit new for me. I would have said my sort of, spiritual focus before this was on like relationships and building relationships, and you find God in the other. And I think I've kind of supplemented that with you find God and holiness in being one with the earth and with each other. And I think that is what's stuck with me most from the week.
Well, I think I've come home with a sense of, well, one of the things that John Philip Newell talks about is being still and aware of God's presence within and all around. And I really think that happened to me. I think I have come home with that sense of presence and the gift of silence and reflection that week gave us, to just feel and appreciate. I remember little things happened. For me, it was flowers more than birds. And we were out during our break with John Philip Newell and his wife, Allie, doing, I guess it was Tai Chi. It was some kind of Eastern exercises. And we were looking out over this field of flowers. I mean, it was grass and flowers, but it was so beautiful. It was astonishingly beautiful to look out there. And my other favorite place was the nunnery, which is a ruin, still in the shape of what it was. And everywhere were sprouting these beautiful, colorful flowers all through the rocks and around and everything. And it was just kind of astonishing. And I think that stayed with me. Greater awareness of a full moon or the autumn leaves or anything.
Well, I would echo everything they said. Certainly the renewed sense of nature and the oneness with everything. But I think the thing that's stuck with me is the rhythm of the time there. We had a regular prayer session before breakfast, and then learning sessions, and then hikes, and that was just really special to get you out of your normal way of thinking about your day when you're at work or whatever. And the other thing that was very special for me was the ending benediction, where John Philip and Allie, his wife, just said a prayer for each of us. And for some reason, at the end of that time, the end of that week, that was extremely moving to me.
So I'm admiring all of your comments and your wonderful descriptions of the beauty of the island. I'm remembering that when we arrived, we were invited to think about what we were yearning for, why we had come, and to still that in front of a whole bunch of people that we were going to continue to see in the future, but we didn't necessarily know well. So my word was connection. And I spent a lot of time working alone with books. And then during the week, we had this lovely rhythm of meetings with opportunities for solitude. And I have to also say, the meals were works of art, right? And they're works of art that also created this sort of sense of congenial conversation and meeting, so that in the course of the week, each of us had some opportunity to talk with each other person. Right? And so by the end, when we're having our sort of parting ceremony, which the Newells seem to have made up out of their deep connection with Christian traditions, they gave us each this blessing and anointed us with olive oil instead of ashes. And I think he said, each by name, calling each of us by name, may you be well this day, and may you be strong for the work of strength, and may you be strong for the work of peace and healing. And we thought that was just incredibly beautiful.
Beautiful. I'm grateful for each of those memories that you shared. One of the stories that John Philip Newell tells is about a book talk that he gave, and after it, a woman came marching up to him, and he was afraid she was going to be angry with him about something that he said, and instead she said, "I knew it, I knew it, I knew it." That there is something about Celtic spirituality that speaks to a deep truth that resides within us, that we may or may not have been given permission to step into, or may not have had the words to articulate. Celtic spirituality brings together a number of threads that we may be holding, but not knowing that we can weave together. So there's a connection with nature. It's both ancient and modern. There's things about it that I think many people might call new agey, but it's also ancient. There's so many connection points that you could make. So I'm curious what connections Celtic spirituality helped you make in your own life. What threads didn't seem like they could weave together that now are so connected you can't imagine them apart?
So I'm going to think about this in terms of an image of a memory of one of the days of the pilgrimage. We walked across the island as a group to the bay where St. Columba landed. And we were invited to go and collect stones, and we're going to take some stones and attach them to something we want to get rid of psychically and throw it in the ocean, which I really liked. And then we're going to take some stones and bring them home with us. So what are we going to bring home with us? And so we're in this large, it's a cathedral of earth, sea, and sky there. The sort of mountains, grassy mountains, stony mountains, looking down into this bay with large rocks and small rocks, some easier to take home than others, and some supposing calling us, right? And I feel like there are three stories there. There's the story of the island, and then there's the story that I like to think of as the immigration story, right? St. Columba is leaving everything behind in Ireland, and he's arriving on this apparently empty beach, or was there someone there? Did they greet him? Did they say, "Hi, Columba, what have you got for us? Have a blanket." So there's this historical story with, which are the roots of Celtic Christianity and our Christianity. And then there is another story going on, which is that all around me, the other pilgrims are walking around and collecting these stones. So this other network is being built in the course of this pilgrimage. And so when I go home, now that I have come home, I've brought the other pilgrims home with me. And so when I see you, I can remember this walk that we had, or this meal that we had, or this story that you told me. So that is the alignment of the island and the spiritual story, the history, and the personal experience for me.
As I said, when I was little, young elementary age, my parents moved from a sleepy Methodist church to a very evangelical church here nearby, so it will go unnamed. And it's a wonderful church. But even as a 8-year-old, I knew it wasn't for me. The theology of it just never made sense to me. The doctrine never made sense to me. And I came here in middle school and nonetheless have been sort of kicking against the traces of that nuclear family history my whole life. And I've read so many books on alternative theology and trying to make sense of it, and I needed to make sense of it in my head. Trying to figure out basically who is Jesus for me, because I wasn't going to leave the Christian church. I'm not going to leave St. Columba's. You're my family. But I needed to just settle into it. And the word you used, Adeline, permission, what Celtic Christianity has given to me, and John Philip, who is an Anglican priest, but ended up walking away from the priesthood because he realized how offensive it was to his very dear Jewish rabbi friend, and that it was very exclusive. And I have always felt like, well, isn't that rich that it just so happens that, we have the right answers here in upper class white middle America, and that just has never made sense. So I didn't leave the week in Iona replacing the doctrine with something else, but he gave me permission. And it was wonderful to just talk to him on hikes and just, basically say, I don't really think I believe in Jesus. Like, is that okay? Kind of thing. And he was just so understanding and loving. And his wife, who's the chaplain at the University of Edinburgh, also just a marvelous, wonderful, warm personality. So it was comforting. And I left there with permission to just figure it out and not have to figure it out in my head. So it was comforting to me.
Well, first of all, here are my rocks that and I think for me, being part of St. Columba's, being part of a church the important things for me have been music and community, and for myself, just a general sense of gratitude. I experience, if I pray about gratitude. So, so where was I going to go from there? And I felt, like Patty, I came home with this community, and I feel more the embrace of this community. And we also had a really wonderful music experience where Allie took us in to this very small chapel in the cemetery and she had us sing quite a bit in parts. And it was just this wonderful, resonant experience. Anyway, I would say that 5 months later, I'm sort of riding on this feeling of gratitude and joy, which is so crazy. I'm 81 years old. I live in a retirement community. My life isn't exactly, joyful, but it feels that way. And I don't know if that's from Iona, but I'm going to give Iona credit for getting me there.
Thanks. In addition to the John Philip's focus on the natural world and the cathedral, the earth, sea, and sky, the other thing that other tenet of Celtic spirituality that he emphasized for us was that each of us is a unique manifestation of the divine. And so for me, what I took away and what it reinforced for me is like, why do I come here every Sunday? And what is it that I'm doing here is I'm searching, trying to listen for like, what is God's plan for me? And how do I see the divine in others? And that's nothing new. It's just a little bit of a shift in focus or an emphasis that I found really helpful as part of my, what I took away from the week.
In our lessons, we studied the naturalist John Muir and his open-eyed wonder about nature. He felt that the earth was a divine manuscript, and maybe as an aspiration, he felt we should be not masters of the earth, but lovers of the earth. We studied Teilhard de Chardin, priest, Jesuit, fossil hunter, theologian. He wrote that the earth is not a fixed thing and that evolution is an ongoing process and an unfinished creation. And he wrote that we experience the divine in the world. Katie McGurvey called me a rock jock while we were on this trip. And I guess that's a compliment. But on the west coast of Iona, there's a rock formation that's 2.9 billion years old. That's half the age of the Earth. And this rock formation migrated from being attached to Newfoundland, and a rift caused the opening of the Atlantic Ocean, and it ended up in the United Kingdom. So the Earth is in motion, and we are a divine manuscript in motion.
Everything that you've said sounds so lovely, but Celtic spirituality, Celtic Christianity is in many ways counter to the Christianity that many people know. So that the Christianity that is responsible for empire and conquest, and even on a smaller scale, religious trauma that many of us carry with us. So it's challenging. This is all beautiful and wonderful, and it is distinct from what many of us inherit in the Christian tradition. So I'm curious if there's pieces of our experience, pieces of Celtic Christianity that are still challenging for you. And maybe they're not, but I'm curious if there's any sticking points.
Well, many of the people we studied, monks, myths, wandering scholars, naturalists, they may have all agreed that it's wise to reject the church's orthodoxy. Many argued that faith is not the acceptance of doctrinal beliefs. Many proclaim that all the earth is sacred. So in processing these challenges, for me, one of the simple things I'm trying to do is take back some church words. The word sacred, for instance, is not just music and it's not just text. It's the fuller awareness as the earth is sacred. And sacrilege is not just a religious term. It's a sacrilege applies to our treatment of the world. And finally, perhaps a longer term goal for me is stretching, where Celtic spirituality would not dictate, not to draw spirituality just from our church, but not even just from our nation, not even just from our species.
Adeline talked about the symbolism of the journey to get to Iona, the 2 buses and 2 ferries, and feeling you're in this special place, and you get focused on the being at one with the natural world and the challenges that we face, and finding the divine in others, and then you come back to Washington, D.C. in 2024. And I think the challenge for me is to, not to fall into the despair that all of that is just, it's not really, we're not really rising to the challenge, and we're not living to the call of being one with nature, as a community, as a society. And I guess that's just, that's why they call it faith. That's why we're faithful people, is we just have to keep at the work of faith. But that to me was the challenge, is to not just say, well, those are all like pretty words, but not really reflective of our times.
At one point, we had a brief discussion about original sin. And what's so wonderful, what feels, if I understand it correctly, so wonderful about the Celtic tradition is that really it talks about original grace as opposed to original sin. And so I don't feel, I welcome this new concept. I don't feel any resistance to it at all because it feels so generous in spirit with, and generous about those human beings and nature. And it feels, I agree with Ron, it feels very much in contrast with what we're experiencing right now. So it's comforting to hold on to those learnings.
Yeah, I don't feel any fear or negativity. Like I said, it feels very freeing to me. And I think it's because I really warmed to his phrase, the imperial church, because I really think that's what has happened. And so this was really attempting to go back to those ancient wisdoms, the ancient practices. And I agree, Ron, I liked your phrase, taking backwards. And he helped us do that, sort of see our own tradition, but from this lens, from this angle. So to me, it's just a way of thinking as I'm sitting here every Sunday listening to the scriptures or saying the Nicene Creed, or sometimes not saying all of the Nicene Creed. It's just to say, well, wait a minute, that doesn't mean that the truths aren't real. They're truths that are underneath all peoples and all faith traditions and all wisdom traditions. And to me, the challenge is, I like that phrase, taking back the words, but also just remembering that we can kick against the imperial church and it won't take down the superstructure of our faith. It doesn't have to be scary. It's hard to do in a church setting, obviously, but also this should be the place where we do it.
So I'm thinking about Shelby's reminder that we talked about original sin. And so my question was, I'm really happy to give up the concept of original sin. But if we give up the concept of original sin, then how do we reinterpret what does the crucifixion and the resurrection mean? And I think I asked John Philip Newell that, and I think he left it pretty open. He didn't have a question that gives closure to that. And Ron's point about the language brings me back to something I have been living with all my life. In my 20s, I had a conversation with people in my adult Bible study. What does God look like? And all the older white men said, oh, we think God has no gender. And I was like, really? Because I've been singing in choir since I was 6. So every week, my God and King. So every week in the liturgy, in all the sermons, in this gorgeous poetry that we have from the Bible, it's royalist language, right? And it's the Father and the Son, and there's no woman, there's the Holy Ghost. And what does the Holy Ghost look like? So that's my challenge.
Thank you. I know a lot of folks in this room were on the pilgrimage. Plenty of folks who maybe have gone on their own or maybe are yearning to make it to Iona at some point, or just curious about the concept of Celtic spirituality. So I'll open it for questions, but part of what I would love to hear from folks is perhaps what we do with this going forward. Are there pieces that you're curious about that you want to do more learning as a community? Maybe you have questions for our panelists or for other pilgrims who are there. Or maybe there's a pilgrim who has something that you really are burning to say that didn't get mentioned thus far. So a variety of different things that we can speak to in sort of a question and answer. If you could come to the microphone so folks online can hear you. Let me make sure it's on. Ready for you.
I'm Barbara Woodall-Craigie, and oh, how I wish that I had been with you. It sounds just wonderful. I've been on that journey for I've been fortunate to have been on the journey for 40 years in a St. Columba's theology group with Dick and Terry Dowd and another person for those 40 years and various St. Columbans at various times. And so have experienced much of what you've talked about without this incredibly fabulous experience. But I love hearing you all now talk about these things, and that's exactly what I wanted to say, is can't we continue this? I was thinking about, it seems to me that we need to have a group of people who share these thoughts and share this Celtic theology and continue it on, especially now.
Hi, I'm Karen Abrams. I chair the St. Columba's Environment Committee. And just really thrilled to hear from each of you and everything you said about the connections that you felt on this pilgrimage to nature and how it related to your spirituality is, I think, what brings me every day to St. Columba's. I mean, I don't come here every day, but when I think about my faith, that is a really grounding principle, and I think, I don't want to speak for all the people on the Environment Committee, but I think it's a driving motivator for many of them as well. So listening to you and answering Adeline's question, where do we go from here, I just wanted to let you all know that the Environment Committee is working on trying to schedule what we're currently calling faith hikes. So hopefully a series of short, accessible, outdoor hikes or walks that Adeline will help us build in some spiritual, prayerful practices. Maybe one will be contemplative, maybe one will be more active and fun, so that they can really be accessed by all parts of St. Columba's parishioners, and hopefully that's a way to continue to make so much of what you took from your pilgrimage and make it available to the rest of us here who didn't get to go. So thank you. And we have a meeting on December 9th if anybody wants to come and help us figure this out.
If I could just say something real quick in response to that, is just like a public service announcement to take Karen up on that offer, because Patty talked eloquently about the St. Columba Bay and that the symbolism of gathering stones and casting away and bringing some back, and it was just it was an amazing thing, where Columba legend says where he landed on Iona, but it was just, to me, that was the most memorable part of the trip. And so, you don't have to travel, 2 buses, 2 ferries, fly to, Scotland. There's plenty of, I think, opportunities for us to do that right here in our own world, and it was really meaningful. So I encourage you to take that up. That would have been my suggestion for how do we carry this forward.
Hi, I'm Kathy Wiss. I've been leading an anchor group since 1997, and for those of you who are newer than that, These are groups that Jim Donald put together to come together periodically, like every week, to read the Bible and pray together. And so early on, I discovered some books by Philip Newell. And I don't know if you discussed this because I was in rehearsal and just got here. But we use those in our anchor group. And they're books that you can use at home. You could also use in a group, a small group, that goes through Bible readings, prayers, and so on. It's very much in this tradition. So that's one way you could continue this even at home. They're by days of the week and morning and evening prayers. And they're beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and the book we used for this, for the pilgrimage, it's called Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul, and I found it very accessible, not sort of deep think theology, and I would commend it to anyone who wants to learn more. That book was great.
And they're accessible on Amazon too.
Accessible in more than one way, yeah.
I just wanted to say, as a fellow pilgrim, one thing we also connected with, both through our pilgrimage leaders, the book, and being on Iona, was the Iona community. And a real aspect of that was a commitment to what we say here all the time, which is living God's love. I mean, a real commitment to pursuing social justice and a commitment to peace. And I think being on the island gave me that time, in a sense, to think about that more deeply and as a practice of faith. And then also here, it just re-energized me in terms of our ministry work here. So that's why I would definitely encourage others to engage with this, the book and the teachings and all of us pilgrims who went, because it was very powerful.
The Iona community also has a lot available online for anyone that's curious, just so you know.
Who made jewelry for us from rocks. My name is Karen Hammonds. I'm on the environmental committee. I can't participate much because I have other family duties, but I would like to encourage us to consider bringing John Newell here. They do have an American base. There is a person, I think, in the western part of the United States who works with him. And he was here in Maryland. He was going to Asheville, where I was going to go to Montreat. But as you know, Montreat could not host John Newell because they moved to Atlanta. It was impossible to go. But I would like us to think about that. Maybe not next year, but that would be a real interesting personal bringing Iona here through his words.
And Alec, too.
Thank y'all. We'll need to get our space prepared for the next service, but thank you for engaging this. Thanks for your ideas about how to continue this spirituality and this work. Talk to any pilgrims if you would like to learn more. There were about 40 of us, so lots of different people you can hear stories from.